I've had a fascinating conversation. I'm delighted to meet so many people who have titles like Chief Operating Officer for Legal or Head of Innovation for Legal inside of companies. 18 months, 2 years ago, when we went around and started and launched the business here in Europe, that I met no one with that title. I was often talking to lawyers who were fascinated by what we had to say, but had absolutely no interest or appetite or ability to buy anything we had to sell. So the fact that many people with that sort of title, many of you are here, I think is a good sign in terms of where this is all headed. So that's hopefully a decent agenda. So just my background, so I had a almost 20-year career before doing what I'm doing now at a company called Accenture, which many of you I'm sure would have heard of, maybe worked with. And my sort of area of focus, I was a client service guy. I used to work with banks. I used to work with high-tech companies, oil and gas companies, and one or two major automotive firms. So, but I was frustrated. I was frustrated that I didn't feel that the pace of innovation, the levels, the appetite for innovation was anywhere near matching mine. And so eventually, after 20 years of trying, I just decided, actually, I've got to go and find something else. I'm going to go find a really highly innovative sector where there's lots going on and therefore have a lot of fun. So I chose professional services. So you can imagine my delight when I saw this slide from McKinsey earlier this year that showed that professional services right now is the second lowest in terms of current adoption, and this is just one sort of data point. This relates to AI. Obviously that's a subset of everything, but the second lowest in terms of current adoption of sort of some of these more advanced tools, and is probably about middle in terms of future trajectory. So they're in a lesson for myself. It's not something they taught me at Harvard. I wish I'd been listening. But there is also a serious point to this slide, which I was reflecting on this week with a colleague in America, which is, for those of us who are in the world of professional services, if your clients, whether they are the corporations you serve as a law firm or the business partners you serve as an in-house team, are over here, and you're over here, not sure where that leaves you in the long term. So there is a serious point to this chart, aside from career advice to Rick. But I'm not entirely sure this is a true reflection of really what's going on. So I sort of came up with my own, what I see happening, today in the legal world, and there's quite a lot going on. So there are things like incubators, innovation labs that we see popping up. MDR, Michigan de Rea, Fuse at A&O, Slaughters have one, I think, in the fintech space. They've just announced another one. So there's quite a lot of sort of activity around incubators. There are one or two examples of digital products, digital businesses that law firms have launched. Aosphere, I call out here, apologies to our hosts, but they just announced their 500th client this month, which I think's really interesting. There are other examples. Simmons have a Navigator product. Although all of this still falls in the world I would describe as publishing online, which is actually where the world was 20 years ago when the internet was invented. So I think we've still got a lot further to go on that journey, but good signs. There are investments that law firms are making in technology companies, Luminance being a high-profile one. Taylor Vintners, if you're familiar with Thought River, it's another investment that they've made, and that's a path that some law firms and companies are making. Communities. I don't know if you guys go to Legal Geek or ELTA. You ever heard of Legal Geek or ELTA? Yeah, a few nods around the room. I mean, really, I've described it, well, others have described it, and I would borrow their description of it being like a movement. The conference they have, I think, is in October. It is very unlike any law or law tech conference you've ever been to, partly because it takes place in Shoreditch and it's full of hipster types and the food they serve and all the rest of it. But the fact that it's actually a lot of like-minded people who are all part of a movement towards looking at digital change, looking at opportunities for changing this industry. So, there are growing movements. There are these sorts of things. Law Without Walls. I'm not sure if I know, Kachi, you have involvement in this. Big global collaborations around access to justice topics and themes. There are hackathons. So we just recently ran one with NIOTA in Germany, where actually the point of the hackathon was a recruitment event. And I'll come back to this theme about people coming into the industry and their expectations and interests as young lawyers looking to use technology as part of their day jobs. And so it was very interesting that there was a law firm in Germany looking to run a hackathon as part of their recruitment, and some of the measures by which people were judged in the actual event would dictate whether they got offered a traineeship in future. I have friends at a company called Totem Partners. Are you familiar with Totem Partners? They do a lot of recruitment in the sort of business services side of legal, and it sort of relates to the point about legal operations. The number one most sought after role today in legal is this head of legal innovation or head of digital. I think whereas 18 months ago, the specific conversation I was having was they would have three or four open positions they'd be recruiting for. Right now, he told me they have 18. This is the CEO, have 18 open positions. So all little signs, as I said, this is not research. These are just little anecdotes I'm picking up along the way that point to something happening, contrary to what McKinsey would say. And obviously, there's all sorts of announcements around the Big Four, around ABS and licenses to practice law. But what was interesting for me about the Deloitte one is that they're also launching a management consulting branch. One of the things that I've always complained about or commented on is that there is no Accenture in law. And one of the things that Accenture are really good at, and others like them, is pointing the way to what the art of the possible might look like in this world, whether it relates to technology or something else, just defining that future state, that future vision. And the fact that there has been no Accenture in law has meant that we've all been trying to find it ourselves, whether it's a small startup tech company or an in-house team or a law firm. So potentially that may develop to something that helps, again, move us all along the journey towards this sort of digital future. So point being, actually, there's quite a lot going on. And lots of law firms doing great stuff. And I saw that, I had to put this on, given where we are. I'm not quite sure what to say about the title. I don't know if that was, so perhaps in case you're wondering where your Hogan's host is today, it might still be in bed. But it's great the fact that law firms are doing this sort of stuff, and I actually welcome it and encourage it all. Obviously there are cynics out there and commentators. You'll see on social media if you're on social media. I actually think every time I see one of these, I just think, great. May not be may not work, it may not be the right idea, but at least we're trying. At least things are being done. So fantastic for that. But of course, there are examples where digital transformation has happened in legal, and I'm sure everyone in the room is familiar with this story. So the electronic discovery story, a $33 billion market predicted to be over 50 in the next, I think by 2025. Driven by the rise in digital electronic communications, regulation, litigation, investigations, and tools that have been required in order to process, all that volume of data. And so whilst people might say there's nothing going on, there's obviously all the anecdotal stuff, but there's also real hard evidence. But again, the caveat to that is this is a whole ecosystem that's developed outside of the current practitioner world. So that magic quadrant, the Gartner magic quadrant there are no law firms on there. And I was talking to a colleague in the States who said that just a recent study in the States has shown that there's still, tools like technology assisted review are still being used in less than 25% of cases in America. So we've still got a long way to go, but points to the possibility. And there are companies like Relativity, who you'll know of, I'm sure, who are worth in the billions now. I was at a company called Epic for a brief period. So there is evidence that things are happening. The theme of collaborations, I think one of the big themes that we're going to see more and more of over the next coming few years is this idea of collaborations, but unusual, non-traditional collaborations. Perhaps a law firm with a tech company with an automotive firm, or a publisher with a tech company, with a corporation, collaborating to combine their different levels of expertise, their different levels of resources, and so forth, to create new sorts of digital tools. And these are a couple examples, both again driven through the private practice world. I think you'll probably all be familiar with the one on the left. The one on the right is an interesting one. So it's a combination of a law firm, Akerman, Thomson Reuters, big publisher, big research house, and actually our technology. And the way it works is the law firm has set up a service. It's focused on data breach and it's a response to, in the event that you have a breach. And the publishing, the research company, does all the background research, the knowledge collation that then gets surfaced in the technology that then gets sold on a license basis to a company that allows them to manage their day-to-day business and to know what to do in the event of a breach. And I just, again, that point about interesting collaborations is something that we're going to see more and more of. So then in the corporate world, if I'm totally honest, and it may just be my perspective, I see less evidence right now. And I think that's possibly because you guys are heads down, busy, doing the sorts of things we were talking about, which is actually just plugging in matter management systems and document management systems and time billing systems and some of the foundational stuff that you need. So, and you probably don't have an incentive to publicize it quite as much as others. But so there's no doubt that things are going on. And I mentioned sort of my delight at the fact that there are so many of you with the operations, head of operations title. Clock, if you're not part of it, is a great again, movement focused around efficiency in the legal function. And they had a recent event in Las Vegas. I think they had 3,000 or 4,000 people attend. The first one was in London in January this year. So that's a great, again, community to be part of. Eagle Labs that Barclays are sponsoring. And probably everyone saw that announcement. So you do occasionally get the odd announcement, the sort of existential, we're all going to disappear overnight sort of world. That's what's going on, a little flavour of what's going on in the corporate world. But then there's this other whole world of startups, of tech startups like Neota Logic. And you may or may not have seen, this is something that a colleague of mine produces. The sort of 5 categories of sort of automation technologies, legal research here, sort of prediction tools, electronic discovery, and obviously that's not an exhaustive list. Contract analytics. We have an expression, we call it yakka. So every week you'll see another contract analytics technology launched, so it's yet another contract analytics company, but points to the fact that there is money and there is demand out there, and there are people coming into this sector that perhaps 5-10 years ago wouldn't have been interested. And that this picture, and particularly that list on the right, was less than half the size 2 years ago, or 18 months ago, 3 years ago. So there is money coming into the sector. I think, for what it's worth, I think that there will be a roll-up that will happen over the next coming sort of 18 months, 2 years, where you'll start to see some of these technologies brought together into a sort of legal tech stack. Because at the moment, I have absolute sympathy with everyone in this room, including the law firms and anyone working in a corporation. It's incredibly hard to buy that, any of that. It's so fragmented, it's so piecemeal. Everyone does a little bit, there's lots of overlaps. It's all confusing, haven't got time. It needs a roll-up first, in my personal opinion.